In my last life I was betrayed by my sister, sold off by my mother and beaten by the man they forced me to marry. I died with nothing, not love, not legacy, not even my name. But fate gave me a second chance. This time I took the path she tried to steal, built an empire from scraps, slapped my sister out of my office and left my past begging at my door. They gave me nothing, so I gave them nothing back. In the autumn of 1979, the government issued the final directive for sending educated youths to the countryside. The era of learning from the peasants was ending, but not before one last batch of students would be exiled to forgotten villages, stripped of identity, comfort, and any hope of returning soon. And only one of us, me or my sister, could stay in the city. The decision, of course, was never really mine to make. I was in the kitchen standing over a pot of cabbage and millet porridge when my mother, Mrs. Zhao, declared it over a clatter of bowls. "Mira will stay in the city," she said, her tone final. I didn't answer right away. I stirred the pot with slow, measured circles, letting the steam rise and sting my face. "She's weaker," Mother continued as if that justified everything. "And prettier. Life's easier here. Safer." Of course. Mira had always been the treasured one, the porcelain doll Mother carried on her back when she was little, shielding her from wind and rain. Meanwhile, I was the one splitting firewood before I turned 10, my hands covered in splinters before I even hit puberty. "Mira has a delicate constitution," Mother added as if reading a script. "You've always been strong, Lena. You'll survive." That was when Mira did something none of us expected. She dropped to her knees with a loud thud. The porcelain bowl in Mother's hands nearly slipped. "Mother," she said, voice trembling with perfect control, "Lena should stay. He's smart. He's capable. She'll be more useful to you here." My spoon stopped mid-stir. I turned my head slowly and looked at her, really looked. Her shoulders were hunched, her eyes wet, but her spine wasn't trembling. Her chin didn't quiver. No twitch, no stammer. The fear she was performing wasn't real. Because I had seen her real fear once. In our previous life. And in that life, Mira had begged, screamed, even pretended to faint for days just to avoid being sent away. Now she was volunteering? Oh, something was wrong. Something had changed. And then I saw it. When she turned to look at me, just briefly, her eyes sparkled with something cold and sharp. Recognition. Calculation. She remembered. She had been reborn. Just like I had. My blood chilled as the memory rushed back. The bitter winters in the countryside, the hunger, the humiliation, the long years I spent crawling my way back into the city through sheer grit. In that life I became the chairman's wife. And she, Mira, envied me for every single moment of it. Her marriage crumbled, her beauty faded, and in the end she sent me a New Year's gift wrapped in red silk. Inside the cured meat she gave me was poison. I had died smiling, believing she'd finally accepted me. This time she was getting a head start. Taking my old path, walking willingly into the countryside not out of sisterly love, but to claim what I once built. Mother tried to talk her out of it, of course. Mira played the part of the dutiful daughter like a master of theater. She even pressed the blunt edge of a vegetable knife against her own throat, just enough to leave a white line. "No one's asking you to do this," Mother whispered, tears gathering. "I want to," Mira replied, voice soft but firm. "It's the best for everyone." I stood silently as the two of them clung to each other like grieving widows. No one looked at me. No one asked what I thought. They never did. The next morning we stood at the station platform under a slate-gray sky. The train tracks stretched endlessly, the air thick with coal smoke and the cries of porters calling out for luggage. Mira wore a thick wool coat. Mother had stuffed her bag with preserved vegetables, dried buns and pork lard candies. I stood with my hands in my pockets watching them say their tearful goodbyes. Myra's long lashes were already wet. "You're so brave," Mother whispered, brushing her cheek. "Send letters, okay? I'll send supplies. Don't let the sun burn your skin." "I won't, Mother. And if you feel ill, tell the village head immediately." "I know. Don't trust strangers." "Mother," Mira said gently, gripping her hands, "I'll be fine. You have Lena here." At that, they both turned to look at me. I didn't smile. I didn't wave. I just stared. Mira boarded the train, climbing up the iron steps without so much as a stumble. She moved with the grace of someone entirely confident in her decision. At the door she turned and called out one final time. Lena, she smiled, this life I will become the chairman's wife. Mother blinked, confused. But I heard it for what it was. A warning. Or a challenge. My lips curled into a faint, unbothered smile. I replied simply. A sound that meant nothing and everything. Mira seemed annoyed by my lack of reaction. Her brows pinched just slightly before she disappeared into the carriage. The whistle blew. The train hissed, groaned, and began pulling away from the station. As it did, I saw her face again, framed in the small square window, eyes still on me. Watching. Measuring. I didn't flinch. I stood there until the train became a distant blur across the far fields, until the wind shifted and the station cleared. Then without looking back I walked toward the city gates. That night Mother acted like nothing had changed. She told me to stop dreaming about education. That the technical school entrance exam was impossible. That I needed to find work. Fast. That Mira would need parcels and medicine and cloth. That I should help because your sister sacrificed everything for you. I didn't argue. I just sat at the table and nodded. But inside I had already made a promise. In the last life I clawed my way back into the city after years in the mud and cold. This time I started here. And I would not be climbing back into someone else's life. I would build my own empire. And when Mira returned, if she returned, she would learn that it was never the path that made me powerful. It was the fire inside me that refused to die. The days after Mira left were unusually quiet. Too quiet. Mother didn't speak to me unless she needed something. The air inside our narrow apartment hung thick with blame, as if I'd forced Mira onto that train myself. It was laughable, really. I hadn't said a word. Mira had practically begged for it, performing a teary martyr act that Mother had swallowed whole. I still remembered how she'd pressed the dull knife to her throat that night. The angle, the way she held it, just close enough to scare Mother, not close enough to leave a mark. Mira knew exactly what she was doing. That wasn't fear. That was theater. And Mother, of course, was her perfect audience. You always were more useful, Mira had whispered dramatically through forced sobs. I'm just in the way. Let me go. And Mother, wide-eyed and trembling, had cried like her heart was breaking. She never realized she was being played. She never noticed the flicker of victory in Myra's eyes when she turned away. I wanted to stay in school. I'd been doing well in class. My literature teacher even said I might place in the top 10 of our district if I took the technical school exam. But the day after Myra's train left, Mother yanked the textbooks from the desk and shoved a small bundle of pork lard candies into my coat pocket. Go to the market and trade these for eggs, she snapped. Also, don't get any ideas about school. That dream's over. I stared at her. Why? I asked plainly. Your sister's gone to the countryside, she replied like it was obvious. She's suffering. You need to find a job. We'll have to send her food and clothing, and your father's pay barely keeps us fed. She didn't say it, but she meant it. Mira had sacrificed for me, so now I had to give up everything to support her. I can study and work, I said quietly. There's a 6-month course at the Open University. Heap. If I pass, I might get a job with placement. Mother scoffed. 6 months. Who's going to feed you until then? I didn't answer. She wasn't really asking. Then she dropped the real plan on me. Uncle Wei came by yesterday. He asked about you. I went still. Mother continued like she was sharing good news. His son Chinbo just got back from the fields. He's looking to settle down. They're offering a bride price of 1,000 yuan. My blood ran cold. You're joking, I said. Don't be ungrateful, she snapped. That money could help your sister. You'll live well with the Wei family. They even have chickens. I blinked slowly, refusing to let my fury show. If you like their chickens so much, you marry him, I said. She gasped. If you have time to arrange marriages, I added, you have time to go raise ducks. Mother lunged at me with a broomstick, shrieking, ungrateful child. After everything I've done for you. I didn't stay to listen. The next day Chinbo showed up outside our building. He was taller than I remembered, barely, but everything else was the same. The lazy eyes, the crooked teeth, the way he smacked his lips while chewing sunflower seeds. He sauntered over like I already belonged to him. I heard you're going to be my wife, he said, grinning. I heard pigs can fly, I replied flatly. He laughed like I was flirting. Then he reached for my wrist. That was a mistake. I grabbed his thumb, twisted it backward and kneed him hard in the stomach. He crumpled to the ground like a sack of spoiled grain, groaning for his mother. "You touch me again," I said calmly, "and you'll be eating from a straw." When I turned to leave, I caught a few neighbors watching from their balconies, mouths agape. One of them even clapped. I didn't smile. I didn't have time for applause. That night, I waited until Mother was snoring before I crept into her bedroom. The old wooden money box sat tucked beneath her bed, just like always, worn, rusted and secured with a flimsy latch. It had a pink peony carved into the top, now faded and chipped. I paused. I had never stolen a single thing in my life. But I wasn't stealing now. I was reclaiming what was mine. Mother had never bought me a coat. Never paid for my pencils. Never packed me lunch when I walked across town to school in the snow. Mira had been her golden child. I'd been her laborer. I took 50 yuan. Just enough to pay rent and apply for the training course. From the window, I saw her stir in her sleep. Then I turned and slipped out of the house forever. The town I moved to was small, 2 counties away. No one knew me there. I found a single-room rental above a rice shop. The walls were yellowed from years of cigarette smoke and the bed was as hard as brick. But I had my own door, my own key, my own future. I spent the first few days boiling water in my little tin pot and reading under a flickering bulb. I couldn't afford curtains, so I used my winter coat to block the window at night. The open university campus was no bigger than a primary school. The floors were uneven, the blackboards cracked, and most of the students were older men who treated me like a joke. "You here for a husband?" one of them sneered on the first day. I didn't answer. By the second week, I was solving mechanical diagrams faster than anyone else in the class. The jokes stopped. At night, I worked on my old textbooks by candlelight. I taught myself business math. I read about logistics, supply chains, storage fees. I still remembered bits and pieces from my past life. What had worked, what hadn't. I wrote down everything. Not dreams. Plans. On my 3rd week there, I saw a girl in the market drop her bicycle. The chain had slipped. Her little brother started crying, worried they wouldn't get home in time for dinner. I squatted down, wiped my hands on my skirt and fixed the chain in 60 seconds. The girl's mother offered me a cabbage as thanks. That night, I painted a sign on scrap wood and nailed it outside my window. Repairs, quick and honest. No one came the first day. Or the second. But on the 3rd, a man with a broken brake stopped by. By the 5th, I had 2 more customers. By the 7th, I was charging 5 mao per job and getting tips and leftover rice. I didn't need anyone's permission. I was building something of my own. One evening, as I scrubbed grease off my hands with a rag, I looked at myself in the cracked mirror above the wash basin. My face was thinner. My eyes darker. But there was something burning behind them. Something that hadn't been there before. Resolve. In my past life, I hadn't gotten this chance. I'd been shipped off, married off, ground down into something silent. Now I was free. Free to study. Free to build. Free to rise while they watched from the train windows, wondering how I had done it. Let them wonder. Let them think I was the fool. Let them remember me only when it's too late. The bicycle stand started with a folding stool, a wooden crate and a handwritten sign. I picked a spot near the bridge on Market Street. Busy enough for foot traffic but not so crowded I'd draw unwanted attention. Most repairmen in town were old men with gray stubble and grease-blackened hands. No one expected much from a teenage girl with a braid and a wrench. But expectations had never mattered to me. Only results. By the end of the first week, I had patched 2 inner tubes, tightened 4 chains and fixed 1 crankshaft with borrowed pliers. Every job I finished on time. Every part 1 charged fairly. The coins I earned went straight into a cloth pouch under my bed. On the 7th day, a man with broad shoulders and an even broader plank of lumber strapped to his back limped up to my stand, his front wheel wobbling like a drunkard. "You do quick work?" he asked gruffly. "Faster than most," I replied. He nodded and set the bike down. His hands were rough, his shirt speckled with sawdust. I recognized him instantly. Mr. Huang. In my past life he had been a humble carpenter, gentle, quiet, kind. Later he became the first private businessman in our town to break the million-yuan ceiling. But the journey hadn't been kind. He'd fallen ill, his children too young to carry the weight. His empire had crumbled after he died. This time I wouldn't let that happen. I fixed his front wheel in less than 10 minutes. When I handed it back, he raised an eyebrow. Where'd you learn this? Nowhere, I said. I figured it out. He laughed quietly. You'll go far, girl. He was the first person in a long time to say that and actually mean it. I had just begun setting aside money for a proper set of tools when Mother showed up. She didn't come quietly. I was tightening the spokes on a delivery boy's rear wheel when I heard her voice tear through the street like a whistle from hell. Lena. I froze. My heart didn't stop, but it flinched. When I looked up, there she was, still wearing that same outdated green jacket. Her cheeks flushed, her chest heaving like she'd run all the way from the city. She didn't even say hello. Something happened. Myra's in trouble. I stayed silent. Lena, don't just stand there. She's getting married to Tao. Do you know who that is? The village chief's son. Of course I knew. Tao. The boy who had grinned while I cried. The man who, in my past life, had tied me up in the ancestral hall and stripped me in front of the villagers when I resisted the marriage. The one who had called me a wife but treated me like a trophy to be passed around among his thuggish friends. I said nothing. Mother didn't care. We're going now, she snapped, kicking over my bike stand like it was nothing more than a pile of trash. You're her sister. You should care about her future. I didn't flinch. But I knew, if I didn't go with her, she'd destroy everything I had built so far. I packed my bag in silence, picked up the few tools I could carry and followed her. The trip to Longshu village took 10 hours by train and another 5 by bus. The roads got narrower with every mile. The air heavier. Just as it had in my past life. We arrived just as the sun dipped behind the mountains. The first person I saw was Tao. He stood outside the old village hall, a red sash across his chest and a cigarette dangling from his lips. He looked exactly the same, overconfident, poorly shaved, his pants slightly wrinkled and one foot resting arrogantly on a stool. And right beside him was Mira. Wearing red. Red silk. Red lipstick. Red hair ribbon. Her face lit up when she saw me. Lena, she said sweetly, as if we were just two sisters sharing a picnic. I'm so glad you could make it. I said nothing. You're just in time. I wanted you to see it. See what? My happiness, she smiled, resting her hand on Tao's arm. You never got a proper wedding, did you? I watched her closely. Beneath the smile, her eyes were sharp. Gloating. In my last life, this moment had been my humiliation. In this one, it was her declaration of war. The wedding feast was already underway. Red cloth hung from the trees. Firecrackers exploded in the distance. The whole village had turned up. Mother was sobbing loudly now, shouting about being tricked. You monster, she screamed at Tao. You forced her. You think we'll stay quiet? We'll report this. Mira looked at her like she was a child. Mom, she said gently, you're embarrassing me. Then she turned and whispered something to one of the men standing by the hall. I caught just a few words. Hold her. Keep her calm. The man nodded. And then I understood. This wasn't chaos. This was Myra's plan. She wanted me here, for a reason. To repeat what happened last time. To trap me. But this time she'd chosen Tao. She thought if she married him instead, she could have everything I once built. My connections, my luck, my status. Without paying the price. But she was wrong. Because I remembered everything. And I came prepared. Inside the village hall, the air was thick with rice wine and smoke. Tao's friends lounged around, leering and laughing. Their eyes followed me the second I stepped in. I told you she'd show, one of them muttered. Didn't think she'd be this pretty though. Another snorted. She's a city girl. Thinks she's better than us. The doors closed behind me. I saw Mira at the front table holding a wine cup. He beckoned me over. Come, she said. Toast with me. I approached slowly. My right hand was in my coat pocket. You always liked wine, she said. This is special. For you. She poured a glass and slid it toward me. I didn't touch it. I don't drink, I replied. Father said he'd break my legs if I ever did. She flinched. Just barely. But I saw it. She remembered that line. It was exactly what I'd said in our first life. And she remembered what came after. What she did. Suddenly the air changed. Two of Tao's friends shifted behind me. One took a step too close. Another reached toward my wrist. Bad move. In one motion I turned and knocked over the table. The wine glass shattered. Mira screamed. Before anyone could grab me, I pulled the fruit knife from my pocket and lunged, not at Tao, at Mira. She stumbled back, eyes wide, but I was faster. I slammed her to the ground and pinned her wrist to the dirt floor. "Let me leave you something to remember me by," I whispered coldly. She shrieked. But I didn't hesitate. The knife came down. A flash of silver. A spray of blood. A pale pinky finger dropped to the floor like a broken twig. Silence. No one moved. The men who had been advancing froze, mouths agape, eyes wide with fear. In this village they were used to breaking people, especially women. But they had never met someone like me. In my past life I had been ruthless with myself, enduring everything thinking it would earn me safety. In this one I had learned better. You don't survive by breaking yourself. You survive by making them afraid to touch you. I stood slowly, my boots soaked in dirt and blood, and turned toward the door. No one followed. No one dared. Outside I didn't look back. Myra's scream rang in my ears, shrill and piercing. But I felt nothing. Not guilt. Not regret. Only clarity. That past life was dead. And now so was her illusion of ever being me. The train back to the city screeched and groaned as it pulled away from Longshu village, carrying me farther from the stench of blood and bitterness. I didn't bring luggage. I didn't need to. Everything I'd taken into that village I still carried: rage, memory, and an unwavering will to win. But I left one thing behind. Her pinky. And the last illusion that I owed my family anything. Back in the city, I unlocked the door to my rented room. The small space greeted me with the scent of oil and rice husk. My stool was still in its place. My cloth pouch of saved coins untouched. The tools I'd hidden beneath the bed were still there, cold and waiting. I sat down, washed the dried blood off my hands, and started planning. In my last life I'd clawed my way from nothing, but always too late. One step behind men who held the money, the contracts, the connections. This time I would move first. And faster. Mr. Huang returned to my bicycle stand 3 days later with a loose pedal and a tighter expression. "You disappeared," he said. I shrugged. "Family emergency." He didn't pry. Just nodded and lit a cigarette. After a long silence he said, "I've been thinking of expanding. Wood supply. There's a shortage everywhere. Especially down south." I wiped my hands on my apron. "Then let's go into business." He looked at me like I'd suggested climbing Mount Tai barefoot. "You're what, 17? 18, I lied. "And you need someone who's fast, flexible, and not afraid to get their hands dirty." "That's me." He chuckled. "You don't scare easy. I've met worse than wood prices." And that was how it began. We scraped together what little capital we had and started sourcing lumber from small mills in the outskirts. The South had paper factories that couldn't keep up with demand. If we could get lumber to them faster and cheaper than their current vendors, we'd be in business. Transportation was the real hurdle. You needed permits. Bribes. But I wasn't afraid of red tape. I was afraid of going back to being powerless. And that fear made me bold. Our first big shipment was set to arrive at the East Dock, an overworked hub lined with rusting cranes and bureaucrats in sweat-stained shirts. I arrived early that morning with the papers tucked into my satchel and a flask of tea for luck. Mr. Huang walked beside me, quieter than usual. "They don't like outsiders," he murmured. "Then they'll hate me," I replied. "I'm used to it." Standing at the unloading point was a man I recognized instantly, Deputy Lin. Tall, broad-shouldered, and mean-eyed, he leaned against a rusted stool like he owned the whole port. Technically he didn't, but practically, he decided who loaded, unloaded, and moved cargo in this town. He was the gatekeeper. And we were nobodies. "Shipment's overweight," Lin grunted after barely glancing at the papers. "We'll need a handling fee." "How much?" I asked. 500 yuan. Mr. Huang gasped. "That's robbery." "Business," Lin corrected with a smirk. I stepped forward. "We don't have 500, I said. "But I can give you a promissory note. I'll pay it once the shipment's sold." Lin rolled the cigarette between his fingers and let out a laugh. "I don't take IOUs from little girls with grease on their faces." I reached into my satchel, pulled out the note, and held it out anyway. He didn't even look at it. Just tore it in half. That was his answer. I took a slow breath. Then I stepped back, found a discarded iron shovel leaning against a crate, and slammed it into the concrete between us, handle quivering like a warning. The dockworkers jumped. Even Lynn blinked. If you won't take the note, I said calmly, then let's do it the hard way. I glanced around, raising my voice just enough to draw attention. I've got witnesses. If you try to block this shipment without cause, I'll call the party office. I'll say you tampered with our papers. That you tried to extort us. You threatening me? Lynn snarled. No, I said, gripping the shovel tighter. I'm telling you I'll fight for my cargo. And if that means jail, I'll take it. I paused. Then added, voice like steel, but I'll make sure you get there first. A tense silence followed. Some dockworkers stopped what they were doing, watching us with wary eyes. I stared Lynn down. He cracked first. He laughed, slow and guttural. You've got a death wish, he said. Fine. Offload the shipment. We unloaded every plank under his sharp gaze. Mr. Huang worked in silence. My arms ached, my palms blistered, but I didn't stop until the final ledger was signed. As we packed up to leave, Lynn called after me. You've got nerve, he said. Come back sometime. Next time maybe we do business over dinner. I didn't smile. But I nodded. Because survival sometimes meant shaking the hand that tried to strangle you. The profit from that deal was more than we had dared hope. After paying off transport fees, mill costs and bribes, we still cleared over 2,000 yuan. Mr. Huang offered to split it 50-50. I gave him 70%. I'm still young, I said. You've got a family. He blinked, then clapped a heavy hand on my shoulder. You're a rare kind of girl. Not rare. Just desperate to make sure no one like Mira or Tao ever stood above me again. With my share of the profits, I bought land near the new market square. Land that, in 10 years, would be worth its weight in gold. The sellers laughed behind my back. What kind of idiot builds near an empty rice field? Let them laugh. I knew exactly what I was doing. I hired contractors. 3 stories. Reinforced beams. Red tile roof. First floor for operations. Second floor for logistics. Third floor? My office. My throne. When it was done, the townspeople came to gawk. Some offered congratulations. Others offered friendly advice. Mother came by too. She circled the building once, then said, "The bathroom faces the living room. Bad feng shui." I didn't invite her in. A few months later, Mr. Huang fell ill. He'd been coughing for days but insisted it was just dust from the lumber. When he finally collapsed, the hospital confirmed it. Kidney failure. Too late for surgery. Too weak for dialysis. I visited him every evening. He cried the first time he saw me. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice shaking. "I should have worked harder. Saved more. Now look at Mary. What'll she do?" I took his hand. "I'll take care of her," I said. He tried to protest. "You already have," I added softly. "More than my own father ever did." His eyes welled up. That was the last time we spoke. After he passed, I kept his photo in the lobby of the new building with a brass plaque that read, "Founding Partner, Mr. Huang." His daughter Mary showed up one day in a faded jacket and tear-streaked cheeks. "I want to work," she said. "Don't want pity. Just work." I nodded. "You'll start in logistics." She blinked. "Really? I need someone who won't steal, lie, or waste time." She nodded. "I won't disappoint you." And she never did. Together we built Brightwood Enterprises, named after the smooth lumber we shipped and the life we were carving from shadows and grit. As we filed our next order, double the size of the last, I stood in my top-floor office looking out over the city. I had no family photos. No framed certificates. Just a map of the province, pins marking routes, and a calendar circled in red. Because I wasn't done. Mira thought marrying Tao would make her me. But she didn't understand. It wasn't the title or the money that made me powerful. It was what I'd built from ashes. And the things I was still going to build. The sign above our new office door gleamed in gold paint. Brightwood Enterprises. I chose the name myself. Bright for clarity, vision, and everything this world tried to keep hidden from girls like me. Wood for the foundation I built. Not just in lumber but in grit, honesty, and things you could hold in your hands. Some people still called me, that girl who used to fix bikes. I didn't correct them. Let them remember where I started. It only made the contrast more satisfying. Within a year, Brightwood Enterprises was running 3 steady transport routes. We supplied lumber to local furniture workshops, small-scale mills, even an emerging construction firm that couldn't meet its quotas. We didn't just move wood, we moved on instinct. If a region was running dry, I anticipated it. If a festival surged demand, I was already 3 days ahead with inventory. If a dock closed early, I had a backup route. People began to trust me, not because I asked for it but because I delivered. Every time. Mary handled logistics better than I ever expected. She didn't need praise, just clarity. And when problems came up, and they always did, she didn't cry or panic. He came to me with facts, not fear. Xinhua Mill just slashed our contract rate by 12%, she told me one morning, sliding a wrinkled invoice across my desk. They're trying to squeeze us. I skimmed it, then glanced out the window. What's their backup plan? They don't have one. The northern suppliers are flooded. Their roads are closed. I smiled. Good. Then we raise the price 5%. She blinked. Raise it. They're bluffing, I said. And I don't play games I didn't start. We raised it. They paid it. Brightwood grew quietly but quickly. We didn't throw banquets or hang lanterns. No lion dancers paraded our streets. But people noticed. A woman running a logistics and lumber company? In the early 1980s? Unheard of. But there I was, ink-stained fingers, wind-burned face, and an iron ledger of completed orders. I didn't wear heels. I wore boots. I didn't wear makeup. I wore purpose. That winter, a government-funded printing factory near the southern coast sent out a province-wide call. They needed lumber. A massive quantity. Fast. The paper industry was booming post-reform. Demand was exploding. Their previous suppliers had failed them due to port backlogs and inland flooding. Whoever could fill the gap would win a 3-year exclusive contract. It was the kind of deal that could change everything. That night I didn't sleep. I stood on the rooftop of the Brightwood office, coat flapping in the icy wind, staring at the city lights like they were moving targets. This was my chance. My hands clenched the railing. And I whispered into the wind. Let them remember the name Lena Zhao. When I brought the contract details to Mary, she looked up from her ledger, eyes wide. It's huge, she said. Too huge. I asked. She hesitated. If we mess it up, the penalties are triple. And we'll be blacklisted. I know. She glanced down at the papers again. Then we go all in. We called in every favor. Every contact. Every dusty name in the margins of old order books. I sent telegrams to 4 lumber mills. 2 answered. The 3rd hesitated. The 4th asked if I could guarantee the deposit. I wired it without blinking. I sold my second-best truck to cover raw material costs. I pawned the office typewriter to hire 2 temporary drivers. Mary and I slept in the back of a transport vehicle for 4 nights straight, eating cold buns and salted peanuts, reviewing manifests under dim lanterns. She caught a fever halfway through the 2nd week. I told her to rest. He didn't. We're in this together, she said hoarsely. I'm not leaving you alone. I didn't argue. Because deep down I needed her. Sabotage came on the 12th day. Someone slashed the tires on 2 of our loaded trucks at the depot. One of the drivers, a boy from another province, panicked and quit on the spot. I could smell the fear. Someone didn't want us to succeed. Maybe it was a rival firm. Maybe it was a cousin of Tao's. Maybe it was just fate trying to test me again. But I didn't flinch. I rolled up my sleeves, grabbed a wrench, and replaced the tires myself with Mary's help. By midnight, the trucks were back on the road. I rode with the lead vehicle, navigating dark mountain curves with numb fingers and a dry throat. But I didn't stop until I saw the glow of the southern docks. And when I stepped out, sun rising behind me, I raised my arms and shouted, "Brightwood delivers." The dock workers stared. Then they broke into cheers. We filled the order. To the last plank. The printing factory signed the contract that afternoon. 3 years. Sealed and stamped. When the deal closed, we'd net nearly 60,000 yuan over the term. Mary wept. I didn't. I just sat down in the corner, stared at my grease-covered boots, and whispered to myself, "This is only the beginning." The newspapers came soon after. Young woman breaks into men's industry. From bicycle repairs to regional transport mogul. Brightwood Enterprises carves a path for female entrepreneurs. I didn't care for the headlines. They called me fearless. Unconventional. Bold. But the truth was simpler. I was angry. I was focused. And I had nothing left to lose. In private, I still thought of Mira. I imagined her waking up in that moldy village house, married to Tao, pretending it was a sacrifice when it was just a poor trade. She'd wanted the crown, but never the scars that came with earning it. I didn't hate her anymore. But I would never forgive her. Not for what she took in our last life. Not for what she tried to steal in this one. Let her watch me from whatever gutter she crawled into. Because I wasn't just the chairman's wife this time. I was the one carving the throne. The day of the housewarming, the sun rose bright and arrogant. It felt right. The new Brightwood headquarters stood proudly beside the market square, 3 stories of red brick, arched windows and polished wood signs. The building wasn't just a structure. It was a monument. A symbol of everything I had carved with my own hands, every sleepless night, every cut, every bruise. The first floor buzzed with laughter and conversation. Long tables were lined with food, steamed buns, stir-fried vegetables, pork ribs in sweet sauce. A red banner stretched across the ceiling. Brightwood, where grit meets growth. Guests milled about with bowls of hot tea, clinking glasses, complimenting the woodwork. Some of them were investors. Others were old workers who had stayed loyal when the docks tried to squeeze us out. Mary stood by the staircase, accepting compliments with flushed cheeks. I was on the balcony, overlooking the crowd when I heard the door swing open downstairs. And then, that voice. Familiar. This wallpaper is hideous. My entire spine stiffened. I turned. Mrs. Zhao. Still dressed like the city owed her something, her expression sour as vinegar. Right behind her stood Mira, in a coat 2 seasons old but carrying herself like royalty. Uninvited. Unapologetic. Unbelievable. They walked in like they belonged there. Mother began inspecting the space with a critical eye, dragging her fingers across the edges of a carved railing like she was checking for dust. I don't know why you'd put a bathroom facing the living room, she muttered. Such bad feng shui. I'll have someone tear that down. I stared at her. She stared back smugly like she still believed her opinion mattered. Mira walked in next, unbothered by the stares. She carried a bag, large and floral, and dropped it unceremoniously in the hallway like she was moving in. Oh, Lena, she cooed as if we were friends catching up over lunch. I didn't realize your office was so spacious. I didn't answer. Guests nearby fell silent, watching. The room, which moments ago had been warm and buzzing, was now frozen. Mira didn't seem to notice. Or didn't care. She peeled an orange slowly, then looked up. I'm planning to open a dumpling shop in the county, she said casually. Give me the land next to yours. Just like that. As if she were asking for a napkin, not prime real estate. I didn't move. I just stared. She smiled wider. This place, it's too big for you anyway. You can afford to share. Then, slowly, theatrically, she lifted her hand. The one missing a pinky. I lost this because of you, she said, voice loud enough for the whole room to hear. I went to the countryside in your place. I married Tao, who beat me, cheated on me, while you stayed here and got rich. Gasps rippled through the guests. Mira took the reaction as validation. She raised her hand higher like it was a trophy. I bled so you could have this life, she said. So yes, Lena, I'm owed. You should give me the shop lot. And the company shares. And... slap. My palm connected with her cheek before she could finish. A hard, echoing crack that silenced the room. She stumbled back, stunned. I took one step forward and slapped her again. Slap. This time her mouth fell open. The orange tumbled from her hands and rolled beneath the table. Then once more. Slap. The third one was for the poison in the cured meat. The betrayal. The smugness. The years she spent trying to become me instead of becoming someone worth anything. Tears sprang into her eyes, not from pain but from shock. Mira had always believed she was invincible in front of me. That our mother would always protect her. That guilt would silence me. But she was wrong. So wrong. You owe me nothing, I said, voice calm, clear and merciless. I never asked you to go to the countryside. You volunteered. I stepped closer, watching her flinch. You didn't do it for me. You did it to take what I built in my last life. You wanted my path. My success. But you didn't have the stomach for the pain it takes to build any of it. She opened her mouth. I cut her off. You made your bed, I said coldly. Now lie in it. Mrs. Zhao finally found her voice. She's your sister, she shrieked. You should be helping her. I turned to face her fully. Did she help me? I asked. When she tried to trap me in the village and marry me off to Tao. When she drugged my food. When she let Tao's thugs tie me up and parade me like cattle. Mother's face paled. I turned to the crowd, raising my voice just enough. This building wasn't handed to me. I didn't inherit it. I bled for it. While Mira was trying to steal her way up, I built my own ladder. No one argued. Aunt Lee from the Seamstress Guild crossed her arms and muttered, "Good for you, girl." Mr. Fong, the warehouse owner, raised his cup. About time someone slapped that leech. Even Deputy Lin, who had quietly arrived with a gift basket, smirked into his wine. Mira saw it all. He saw the room choose me. And she broke. She dropped to her knees. "Lena," she whispered. "Please. I have nowhere else to go." I didn't bend. "Not anymore." "Then go where the rest of the rats do," I said. Mary appeared at my side with 2 workers. I nodded once. "Remove them." Mira screamed. Mrs. Zhao cursed. But they were out within minutes. The door slammed shut behind them. Silence settled. Then applause. Later that night, I sat on the 3rd-floor balcony watching the lanterns sway in the breeze. Mary joined me with 2 bowls of sweet tofu pudding. She handed me one and said quietly, "Do you feel better?" "No," I said. "Will you?" I stared into the city skyline. I don't need to. Because victory wasn't a feeling. It was a fact. And today I had one. The dumpling shop opened 2 weeks later. I heard about it before I saw it. From the whispers of workers who passed by my warehouse, from Mary's careful phrasing over tea, from the amused chuckles of market vendors. "She's calling it bright dumplings," one said. "She used the same red paint as your front gate," another added. By the time I walked past it myself, I wasn't even surprised. Red lanterns. White wood trim. A hanging banner with blocky gold lettering that looked suspiciously familiar. Inside, a counter mimicked the one Mary designed for our main reception area, right down to the brass bell. She hadn't just opened a business. She tried to become me. The dumpling shop sat across from the east end of the square. Less traffic, fewer vendors, limited footfall. But Mira had always been about appearances, not strategy. Her menu matched the one from my employee lunch canteen word for word. She'd even copied the font. Chicken and leek dumplings. Pork with Napa cabbage. Seasonal vegetable medley. When I saw the list printed on her chalkboard, I felt nothing. No anger. No fear. Only the strange weight of déjà vu. Because I had lived this failure before, just from the inside. Mira opened with flair. Posters, flyers, even a hired musician playing an eru on the corner to draw crowds. She handed out coupons. Offered free tea. But business is not built on noise. It's built on timing. And Mira was late. Too late. 3 shops already operated in the square. 1 family-run, 1 franchised, and 1 backed by the old rice merchant whose father supplied half the town's flour. They saw her as a threat. And they moved fast. Within a week, prices plummeted. 1 shop offered 10 dumplings for 50 cents. Another threw in free pickles. The 3rd hired a child to shout slogans all day. Mira tried to keep up. She slashed prices. Doubled coupons. Added vinegar and chili oil. But her math didn't work. Her portions got smaller. Her dumplings thinner. Customers came once, then vanished. One morning, I passed by on my way to inspect a new delivery truck. The shop was empty except for Mira. She stood behind the counter, wearing lipstick far too bold for her sunken cheeks, folding dumplings with trembling fingers. I didn't stop. She didn't call out. A week later, a flyer fluttered against my office door. It had blown over from the wind, probably from across the square. On it was a smiling Mira holding a plate of dumplings and a forced grin. Bright dumplings, run by the sister of Brightwood. I stared at it. So that was the plan now. Write my name. Claim sisterhood as if I were a co-signature on her dreams. Mary came in with a stack of reports and paused when she saw it. "Should I report this?" she asked. "No," I said, tearing it in half and dropping it in the wastebasket. "She's burning her own bridge." By month's end, she was defaulting on suppliers. She tried sourcing from the cheaper vendors outside the county. The flour clumped. The pork came gray. The cabbage wilted in the heat. Customers stopped coming. One evening I saw her across the square trying to hand out dumplings for free. No one took them. Even children ran past, chasing kites instead. And just like that, bright dumplings began to rot from the inside. Like a fruit bitten by pride. It was around this time the rumors started. Tao was looking for her. He had heard she'd left the village. That she'd opened a shop. That she had money. He still drank. Still gambled. Still hit whatever didn't agree with him. But the one thing he never let go of in my last life? He had thought I was his. That marrying me meant he could come and go as he pleased. When I left him, he chased me across 3 provinces. Now Mira, with her red lanterns and desperate smile, was dangling herself in the same net. And I knew what was coming next. 3 days later she came to my office. Mary knocked once, opened the door, then stepped aside. And there she was. Thin. Pale. Makeup smudged under her eyes. Her coat wrinkled. Her shoes worn. But her pride, still there, clinging to her like a dying ember. I leaned back in my chair. Mira didn't say anything at first. She stood by the doorway, twisting her fingers, glancing at the desk, the plaque, the thick stack of contracts behind me. Finally she whispered, I made mistakes. I waited. She stepped forward. You were always smarter, she said. You knew how this world worked. I still didn't speak. He sniffled. Tao sent a letter. He's coming. I don't know what to do. I raised an eyebrow. Why not go greet your husband? Isn't that what you wanted? To be me. Her lips quivered. I was wrong. You were greedy, I corrected. She winced. I thought, if I walked your path I'd get the same ending. I stood up. Walked around the desk slowly. Stopped just a foot in front of her. You thought you could cheat pain, I said coldly. Steal my life without earning a single scar. Her voice cracked. Please, Lena. I'm scared. I looked at her, this girl who had poisoned me in another life. Who tried to chain me to a fate she was too weak to carry herself. And now she wanted rescue. Redemption. Relief. But I had none of those to give. You wanted my life, I said quietly. Now you can have the price of it too. I turned my back. Called out to Mary without hesitation. Escort her out. If she leaves anything behind, burn it. Mira sobbed once. Loud, sharp, and guttural. But I didn't flinch. She tried to clutch my arm. I stepped aside. Mary didn't need to ask twice. When the door slammed behind her, I walked back to my desk. There was a dull ache in my chest. Not guilt. Not sorrow. Just the ache of memory. Of what could have been, if she hadn't chosen envy over love. Outside my window I saw her stumbling across the square. The dumpling shop had already closed. Its shutters rattled in the wind. Its name peeled off in fading gold paint. The view from the rooftop had changed. Where there were once crooked stalls and cracked sidewalks, there now stood paved roads, bright storefronts, neon signs glowing into the night. And in the center of it all, tall, proud, unshakable, stood Brightwood Tower. 7 stories high. 3 flags on the roof. Offices on every floor. A grand lobby with a glass chandelier and portraits of our founding team along the marble corridor. My name etched on the brass plaque at the front. Lena Zhao, founder and chairwoman. It had taken 12 years. 12 years of storms and setbacks. Late payments. Betrayals. Exploitation. People telling me I was too young, too poor, too female. And yet here I stood. Brightwood Enterprises now stretched across 3 provinces. We had lumber contracts in the west, shipping fleets in the south, warehouses near the capital. Our trucks moved more than just timber now. We handled textiles, grain, ceramic supplies, and soon electronics. But numbers weren't what mattered. It was what we unlocked. Because with every warehouse built, I hired women. With every regional hub, I trained girls from towns so small you had to squint to find them on a map. They came in carrying lunchboxes and dialects thick with hills and rivers. Some were shy. Some were hardened by too many hungry winters. All of them were fighters. I saw myself in each one. So I opened the door wider. I made sure they got paid first. That they were promoted based on skill, not gender. That their voices echoed louder than any man who tried to speak over them. Soon they weren't just employees. They were managers, engineers, branch directors, shareholders. I didn't build a company. I built a pipeline, for women who'd never even dreamed they could lead. When asked why I never married, I always smiled and said the same thing. I didn't want to wake up one day and realize I'd married another version of Tao. Some laughed. Some frowned. I didn't care. Because while others tied themselves to households and bloodlines, I tied myself to impact. I had one life to live again. I wouldn't waste it trading my freedom for a ring. As for Mira, she vanished from public life not long after the dumpling shop closed. Rumor had it she returned to the village with her tail between her legs. Tao never found her. Or maybe he did and she disappeared in a way no one would admit aloud. All I know is, her name never surfaced again. Mrs. Zhao, on the other hand, remained in the city for a time. I allowed her a modest allowance, enough to rent a single room near the train station and keep herself fed. She'd asked for more, of course. Screamed about filial duty, respect, sacrifice. But I never forgot the night she sold me off for a bride price, smiling as if I were a mule brought to market. Some debts are better left unpaid. One spring morning, I took a detour during a business trip to the outskirts of my childhood county. I hadn't been back in years. The old school had changed, repainted, rebuilt, renamed. A plaque now stood in the courtyard. The Lina Zhao School for Girls. Established 1991. I stood before it in silence. Dozens of young girls in green uniforms ran by, giggling, braiding each other's hair, books clutched to their chests. Some played ball. Some recited lines in unison. All of them unaware that once, I had sat in those halls wondering if I'd ever be anything more than invisible. I met with the principal, a sharp woman named Ms. Wren. She poured me chrysanthemum tea and asked gently, "What made you come back?" I answered with a check. A scholarship fund for rural girls. Full tuition. Textbooks. Housing. Job placement upon graduation. She cried when she saw the amount. I didn't. Because I wasn't giving charity. I was investing in my past self, and every girl like me who had been told to shrink. Later that night, back in the city, I returned to the rooftop of Brightwood Tower. The wind was strong. Lights blinked across the skyline like stars come down to visit. I looked out, not down. Because this time I was above the world that had tried to bury me. No man's name followed mine. No shadow from my past stretched long enough to touch this roof. Mira was gone. Mrs. Zhao was a footnote. Tao was nothing but dust. I gripped the railing, took a deep breath and closed my eyes. In my last life they'd called me cursed. Unlucky. Disposable. They left me with nothing. But I came back stronger. This time I built everything myself. And I did it without apologies. Without permission. Without regret. The end.